You boom!
Oh my gosh. Way to rub it in. I don't even know what it is.
You want it. How's your daughter?
She's good.
How old is she?
5. How old is she now?
How old is she? And I did just see Marriage Story, and it is phenomenal. And I'll be shocked if you're not showered with awards. But what made you wanna tell that story? I mean, it's heavy, it's dark.
Yeah, probably 10 years ago, Noah and I tried to work on something else together we kind of developed for a little bit and then just didn't end up kind of being right. And by the time it was ready to shoot it, I was kind of over past it, and it wasn't the right fit.
This project,
No,
not
this
another.
this was a different project.
Oh, it was another one.
It was another project that Noah had never. I don't think he ended up actually making it, and I actually thought that he would never call me again. I don't know. I'm sure you probably have had that experience before, where you feel like you kind of, like maybe something didn't work out professionally, and you're like, well, there goes that relationship, and
No,
that's never happened to you. Yeah,
no.
right. And so I was so surprised when he called me 10 years later, more, 15 years later, to meet and talk about something. I just thought, it was totally came out of the blue, and I met with him in a place in New York, and it was like no time had passed at all, and it was we just kind of shifted right into this moment where he pitched me this story a little bit, and I myself was actually in the middle of going through a divorce, and it was such a strange coincidence, actually. But more than it being that it was about a divorce and I was going through it and felt that was something that I should explore, I felt it was like the right time for Noah and I to work together on something. And this project felt like it was something that he wanted to collaborate on. And you almost kind of got the impression that he needed to cast it before he actually wrote it. And that to me was exciting. It was like I felt that he was writing for me, and it was so different than the experience that I'd had with him like a decade earlier, and so that's how.
So how much of the script was already on the page prior to signing on?
It was not on the page at all.
It was just a concept.
It was a concept.
Wow.
And I think he maybe had started. It was totally like an outline, I think.
Did you have input in terms of how? Because one of the things that I think is so tragic about it is that it's, I think when you think of a divorce story, you imagine much more of a contentious, prickly, almost enemies. But a lot of the movie, there's two people trying to make it work. There's still like an amicable, you're trying to make it work for your kids. So was that part of? Did you have input in that? Because I'm assuming even in your experiences, that it hasn't been like, oh, I hate this person. There's still a lot of love for the person.
Yeah, I think it was sort of, it was Noah's intention to make. He was the one. Actually, when I received the script, I was so. We'd spoken so much about not just our relationships and what it was like to be, single parents, or how it was to co-parent. But we also talked a lot about our parents and our families, and all of that stuff kind of made it in there. And when I got the script, I was so surprised by how much love remained between those two people, and that there was kind of this. It was a love story told through divorce and as a relationship kind of. Noah often says that, like, in order to fully understand something, you kind of have to, like, pull it all apart and sort of start the idea of starting from like the end and like building the story kind of back up was really interesting to him. And I think it really, I think that's why the film has seemingly affected so many audience members, is that it is not it's not one thing or another. It's kind of multi-faceted, and like relationships are just complicated, and there's you can not want to be with somebody but still find them attractive in other ways, and it's complicated, right?
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I don't know. It was exciting to work on it.
Where do you want to live now, doll?
Well, I'm here now, obviously. I don't know if the show will get picked up. It feels like home. It is home. It's the only home I've ever known without Charlie.
I think you probably feel this way too, and I know even when we were doing all the Endgame and Infinity War stuff, were you were prepping to do Knives Out already or not?
Yeah. Well, we were doing the reshoots for those last couple bits. I don't know if you were there. You were so in and out because you died. but I think, yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. If
You haven't seen the movie, too bad.
She didn't make it. Yeah, it was towards the end of filming that Ryan reached out and sent the script for Knives Out, and I love those movies.
Because it must have been so exciting also. Well, I was thinking because I was doing kind of talking to Noah while we were doing the Infinity War and Endgame stuff, and it was such something for me to kind of hold on to during those often sort of just tedious days of,
Sure.
Whatever, like all that action storytelling that we have to do where you have to be like in it for these little like segments of time. I mean,
well, there's a lot of things about those movies where it's not just the actual filmmaking process is very, start, stop with little bits and pieces because of the action, the nature of the movie, plus it's roles that we've played for a really long time, so we're really familiar with it. So it is exciting. No disrespect to those movies. I love those movies, but to come off of them and have a completely different approach to finding a character, to collaborating with other artists, and ultimately, just it's uncharted waters, coming off of a Marvel movie. It's just exciting to get a change of pace.
How does it work with Ryan? How is he on set?
He's wonderful in a lot of ways, and it forces you. I mean, he's very much a plain speaker. He knows what he wants. I love the idea of writer-director combos because you immediately you remove that kind of when a bunch of people read one piece of material, we all have subjective opinions on what we interpret. And when you have a writer-director, they can say, no, this is exactly what I meant. So that eliminates one question right there. But Ryan just has he's very taciturn. He's very unapologetic. 2 takes and you're done.
Really?
Yeah. Which, as an actor, you're terrified because if you give me 50 takes, I'll take them.
Why? What do you think about that, though? Do you ask for more?
I'd always like more, but
how come you don't ask for more?
It takes me a couple days to get comfortable on set to do that. You know what I mean?
Why? Because you feel like...
Because if you ask for more and then they don't get better, it's going to be harder to ask for more in the future. Because
Really?
If you can't prove that this is going to improve, then you're just wasting time. So
that's such a funny way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a really insecure, egoic way of looking at it.
Do you look at the monitor? Like, do you watch your takes and stuff?
If other people are going to, I will, but I don't want to be the only one doing it.
Why?
Because it's intimidating to watch yourself on playback. But Ryan will tell you, when we move on because we got what we needed. You know what I mean? You trust Ryan. If he says we're moving on, we're moving on.
Stop! Hugh Drysdale?
Call me Ransom. It's my middle name. Only the help called me Hugh.
Okay. This is Trooper Wagner. I'm Lieutenant Elliott. I just want to ask a few questions.
You don't watch playback, do you?
No, I don't. But I also, it's funny how, as an actor, you sometimes, you know what? I feel like if you have an idea, and this is probably good advice for actors that are kind of coming up or starting out in film, if you have a good idea for something, you should ask for another take. Or you feel like you maybe have something else in you that you're curious about, you should ask for another take because it will haunt you forever. And even if I've done, Noah, in stark contrast to Ryan, is just like, he's relentless, and you can do 45, 50 takes of one, he only uses one camera. And so and he's very specific about the words are the words, and that's it. And every hesitation and every unfinished sentence and everyone talking over one another is all completely scripted, and nothing is improvised. And
Nothing is improvised in that movie?
Not a single word.
You guys both need Oscars. Because I was like, oh, well, this is just improvised. It's just not.
Oh my gosh, you can't even add in a but. He'll remind you.
It's like
you
theater.
added a but in. What?
That's like theater.
It is like theater. It totally was like theater. And I wanted to ask you about your experience in theater too.
Sure.
Because you're so good.
You're so sweet.
Well, you're so good.
It's like my only actor friend that actually came to see the play.
They paid me too.
Sure. She's the only one who came to see me in Lobby Hero.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, what the hell was it called? That's right, Lobby Hero. You were great in that play.
Thank you.
You were so nervous before you did it.
Terrified. Almost terrified more in the rehearsal process, just because it's a new medium and I'm surrounded by people in the show who no one else was new. I was the only new one there. And I think I was going to try and find a new way of doing what we do. After a while, the process of filmmaking doesn't get stale. You just want to try and find a new way into what has become very familiar. And I think what I was hunting for was that kind of prolonged period of time within a scene, as opposed to the, action cut. Thinking that it would allow this kind of liberation and freedom to kind of let subtext really take over the moment. And it truly couldn't have been more the contrary. When you're on stage, it's like, your hair inside, you're just like, ah! Because you have so much to remember.
It didn't feel like that watching you, though.
Well,
You were in the pocket. And I'm curious because you obviously with the Marvel stuff, and we've worked together like 1,500 times at this point, not just even on the Marvel stuff, but we've done a lot of other stuff together. And I think mostly everything that I've done with you are those 2 takes, whatever, a few takes and moving on, and the schedule is packed and whatever. And so I'm curious, how did you find the relentless schedule and having to 8 shows a week, keep digging in? Did you find it tedious? Did you find it liberating?
A lot of people told me, you're going to have so much time, you just got to go to the theater in the afternoon, you got your whole days. I didn't find that at all.
No.
I got off stage, you're emotionally drained, you're physically exhausted. I just wanted to go to bed, and then before you know it, you're right back at the theater. I think, and I think this really is where it comes down to subjectivity and personal preference, but I played a villain, and within the play, Michael Cera, who's in the show with me, is kind of the moral compass, and certainly the one that you identify with as an audience member in terms of what would you do in the scenario. So as he navigates these ebbs and flows, when he would go through things, you could hear the audience, and these bonds are formed, of common, humanity. My impact on the audience was people identifying me as the person in their life that they despise. And, if I'm doing my job well, they hate me, which is fine. But I think to get up every day and find the motivation to go to the theater and do it, I think the next time I get on stage, selfishly, I'll want just a few moments where I can find that sweet, sympathetic connection with the audience that isn't just representing the worst parts of their personal experience. You know what I mean?
Because you replace, iconically such a likable person
Well,
that I would find, I think we all know who I'm talking about, that
yeah.
I think I would imagine that would be kind of...
That was the appeal.
Right.
That's why I couldn't wait to do it. Well, it was fun, but then, by month 2, you're like, man, it's tough to go and just feel this hate from the audience. Again, that means you're doing your job well, but it's not going to not take its toll, and you're not going to not take some of this home with you, not to use double negatives twice, but it just, I think theater is such a wonderful exchange. It really is. I forget who used this analogy, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it really is like building little sandcastles every night that the audience or the ocean just comes and takes, and then you build another one tomorrow. And that's a beautiful, intangible, fleeting part of creativity. And I think what keeps you motivated to come back has to be part of that exchange. And my whole exchange was just predicated on just loathing. And I think it started to get taxing.
But I feel like when you work, you have to, no matter who you're playing, you need to find some empathy for. Could you find empathy for that person?
Oh, trust me. You know what every actor says. That's like, acting school stuff. You never judge the characters you play. If you judge the characters you play, you're not going to play them real. So no villain thinks they're the villain. But when they start calling things out, oh, this fucking guy. Oh, sorry, I can't say swears. But a couple times, and you take a little bit of. I had a drama teacher in high school who told me he saw a performance of Othello somewhere in Texas in the 70s, and someone in the audience stood up and shot Iago. Shot him. And he survived, but in the hospital said it was the greatest compliment he'd ever received. So getting those reactions from the audience it shows you're doing your job well, but just on a really personal, intimate note, it's so liberating and wonderful to be on a stage, but you really do long for that kind of shared emotional conflict that we all go through. And my character was so detached from any sort of morality. I don't think he, as a character, even found that connection at home with his family. So that channel felt a little shut down. And like I said, over time, it just starts to feel, it weighs on you.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Hey, Benny, you want to ask this guy some questions?
Hi, what is this? What's this arrangement?
Mr. Drysdale.
CSI KFC?
Yeah, original content. It's not there very often. That is one of the best things about Knives Out. It was something that I read that felt fresh and new, and I think it's this weird chicken and the egg thing. Who started it? Did audiences only start going to, lowbrow stuff, so that's what we started making, or is it that we made it first and now that's all we've offered?
Hey, speak for yourself.
True. You know what? You honestly, true. It's fair.
I think there's a lot of. It's interesting because a couple of people actually in the past couple of days have mentioned to me that a couple of extremely esteemed directors have been, really vocal about how movies, the kind of whole Marvel universe and these, I guess, big kind of blockbuster action movies are really using words like despicable and like the death of cinema. And I actually, at first I thought, oh, that seems kind of old-fashioned. And somebody sort of had to explain it to me because it seemed so kind of disappointing and sad in a way. And then they said, no, I think, what these people are saying is that, at the actual theater, there's not a lot of room for different kinds of movies or smaller movies or independent movies because the theater is actually just taken up by these huge blockbuster movies, and there's actually no space for these movies. And, it made me sort of think about how people consume content now and how there's been this huge sea change in how where people view, what the viewing experience is and what the maybe what we would have called the cinematic experience, how that's definitely changed for people as everyone's lifestyle has changed. I mean, people are taking in all of this different content and all these different new platforms, and it's just changing. And I think of all the stuff that's out there that has found a home in whether it's through a streaming network service or maybe on a different kind of television networks that are happening now, or there's all these different ways and people to see stuff, and so all this stuff is getting made that I think would probably have never had a shot before.
Well, that's it, and it really is a testament to what original content. I think original content inspires original content. You know what I mean? I think new stuff is what keeps the creative wheel rolling. I mean, like TV is such a good example for that. Right now, there's unbelievable new stuff happening.
Yeah.
All over that landscape.
Yeah.
There's less risk. They're not beholden to box office results, and as a result, they have more freedom and they allow more creative minds to be in charge of the creative process and ultimately the final product. I just believe there's room at the table for all of it. You know what I mean? Like it's like trying to say a certain type of music isn't music. Well, why bother? Who are you to say that? It just feels like a strange, you know, same team, same team, same
So
team.
what are you looking for now?
Well, every couple of months I decide I'm done acting.
Yeah.
This is just, you know me. This has been my thing for decades now. I always am looking for a way out. But I don't know. I do love it. I do love it. Just original ideas, and that's why I liked Ryan so much, because it was not only, I think, is he a very original filmmaker, but it was his script, and it's why I did Snowpiercer. You know, any storyteller who has a very strong preference. I like people with strong preferences, no matter what they are, in any capacity, even outside of this industry. I think that's something to offer and to explore. And I think maybe in TV right now that those creative minds are given a bit more freedom, you know, because again, they're not beholden to the box office numbers, and they don't have to do all these, you know, testings, and you know, it feels like movies sometimes get inundated with studio notes, and all of a sudden what was once an original idea becomes boiled down to the lowest common denominator, and then you have no one's favorite movie, but everyone's like lukewarm movie. And I think that's why people are maybe turning away and looking to things like streaming service shows that actually are innovative and taking risks. But I still think that's available in film. I mean, look at Marriage Story. That's a really unique film, but
Yeah, I
nothing
mean,
like I'd ever seen.
there's definitely a place for, I mean, even when I had read the script for Jojo Rabbit, I had never seen anything like it
What was it
before.
like working with Taika?
It was great.
I love Taika.
I love Taika
I
too.
can't say enough about the guy.
Yes, I love Taika Waititi. He is incredibly
He is a
like
unicorn.
infectious. Yeah,
I cannot get enough of
infectious
him.
personality. He's a wellspring of ideas and one-liners, and just he's just like a creative, like one of those genius, like once in a lifetime people that come around. And
We were in. Keep going.
you know what? You were in what?
Well, I was in Toronto doing the festival, and he crept in once while I was doing an interview, and he came to say hello to me and tripped and fell and took down the whole set. It was just
Oh, he's so
only
endearing.
Taika.
Yeah, he's really, he was wonderful to work with, and you know, he wrote this script, I guess, like 10 years ago, and strangely enough, it feels like Jojo Rabbit's even more. It's actually kind of sad. It's like seems more relevant now than it was 10 years ago. And I think, you know, if you see it, you'll understand why that's a sad fact. But you know, that film found its way, you know, through Fox Searchlight, which is, you know, has a history of just making really cool, interesting stuff. They don't shy away from, that studio doesn't shy away from stuff that's subversive, and you know, they're happy to give it a theatrical release, and they believe in it. And I think there's room for independent film for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I think people want they want diversity, they want to see different kinds of things, and they want to see different stories that represent them, and different actors that represent them. And I think it's, you know, there's definitely there's room for original stuff. You know, it's hard to find good stuff, period. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
Which is why I actually am curious about your kind of looking at it as a director. If you are, if that's something that continues to interest you, or do you look for material to produce for yourself? Like, how do you, where is your head at with that stuff?
Well, I'm dying to direct, but I don't have the courage or focus to write. And the hardest thing is finding material. Like the good material isn't just, you know, sitting there untouched. So it's tough to find. You know, when I directed, one of the tricky things was, you know, I found some little broken bird script, and I thought, oh, I can nurse this thing back to health. And you know, in retrospect, I do think even the best version of the movie I directed, there may still have been a ceiling based on the material. And so you really do have, if it's not on the page, I may have been, I don't want to say naive, hopeful that I assumed we could elevate it beyond what the potential seemed to be on the page. But if it's not there on the page, it's probably not the right thing to dive into. But that's just it. It's hard to find those scripts, those diamonds in the rough that are just ready to go that no one else has taken already.
Are there stories that you want to tell that you have in your mind?
Yeah, I do, but they're never. It's tough to find the right mechanism because you don't want to be heavy-handed. The stuff that I respond to, as you know, I'm a big, not to derail this discussion, but I really like Buddhism, and I think in a way that's, it doesn't have to be such a specific label. I think that can kind of permeate in a lot of different manifestations. But I think those are stories that I think can touch people. I think we're all looking to find out, from an egoic standpoint, what our relevance is, who we're supposed to be, what the definition of joy and love is, and purpose, and I do think loose concepts of Buddhism address a lot of that, and it's just hard to find a package that can somehow not only represent that, but not in a heavy-handed, sanctimonious way, and still be analogous enough to the society that we're all accustomed to. It's a real difficult needle to thread, and I certainly don't have the skill set to write it, so I'm just on the hunt.
So Eat, Pray, Love too, then.
That's it.
In the beginning, I was the actress, the star, and that felt like something. People came to see me at first, but the farther away I got from that and the more acclaim the theater company got, I had less and less weight.
Scarlett, you know what I'm curious about? What was it like meeting me the first time? And what's it been like working with me? Be nice. Just be nice. They're filming it.
I'm trying to remember when I don't know when I met you for the first time. It must have been on the set of The Perfect Score.
Yeah.
At some point in a rehearsal, we made a very kind of, I guess at the time it felt of the moment teen comedy that actually now is somehow maybe relevant about like SAT scandal called The Perfect Score, and it was I mean it's hard to remember because it was so long ago.
2002.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago, but I mean, we were just children back then.
It's almost 20 years ago.
I was like 17 years old or 18 years old.
Yeah, I think we all went out one night and you couldn't get into the club.
Because I was 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Those were the days. But it's been, yeah, it's so, I think why I mean, you've always been such a great actor. You were great then, and so incredibly photogenic and like just come alive on screen in a way that's very uncommon. And I found that you and I always, even though I remember we had like one scene in
The Perfect Score. It's like my favorite scene in the movie.
Which is a great
It's so
scene.
sweet.
And it was so nice to work with you, because, I felt that we had a great chemistry as actors, and there was a sort of naturalistic approach that I felt that was, there was some likeness there between us, and then we also got to work together on the Nanny Diaries, which again was such a pleasure and also just very easy. I mean, I feel it's always easy between us for whatever reason, because I think we have some similar approach maybe to performance, and we are present with one another maybe just for various reasons, but also I mean, one of the factors being that we're friends and have known each other for such a long time, and I think have a lot of sort of empathy for one another as people. But it was such a pleasure for me to watch you in your play, because I think it's interesting to have an experience of watching, sharing a scene with you because we're face to face and we have this kind of intimacy. And then sometimes I see you, on a screen and you're like up there and huge. But when I saw you in the theater, there's this, it's intimate, but you're also observing in this way that's very different. And I could suddenly see you from a totally different perspective. And then I realized, again, as I have for many years, but it confirmed my thought that that you are a damn fine actor. And I think also just at the coming into your own in a lot of ways as an actor, and you have a confidence about you, so that that allows you to also be vulnerable, and it's also okay, and you let us in just the right kind of way, and I think that's just great.
That's exactly. When I was watching Marriage Story, I was saying to someone I was watching it with, I was like, Scarlett just lets you. I think it's always tough watching people in film, just because you know them, and you know what I mean. And I think every actor, no matter who you are, you have to call from your own experiences. So you're always going to say, "Oh, there's a little bit of
right." Their
the
stuff.
person I know.
Yeah.
When I was watching Marriage Story, I was like, man, Scarlett has a way of just. That's not Scarlett. Like she found, like even in like the subtle, the opening of that movie, like I was just in love with both of your characters. I was so crestfallen because I knew it wasn't gonna work. But that opening stuff, you just have a way of doing things where you shed who you are, but still have that availability. You let people in. That's a really sweet thing, because I think a lot of actors, men and women, have a way of. Sometimes I think the more they get a little, I think being internal and kind of removed, it's mysterious, and it forces the audience to lean in. But if the goal is to reveal, the audience doesn't come to see you; they come to see themselves. And at the end of the day, you have to let them in, and you're so good at just letting people in. And in those moments of true vulnerability, that's where I think it's easiest to fall back into ourselves and our own habits and patterns. But even when you're doing things, like I said, I was like, oh, that must be improvised. But if you're telling me it wasn't, that's just a testament to what I've always known, that you're one of the greats.
This is working for me. I like this interview.
Having Avengers be the biggest movie of all time is, it can
Is
make
it
you.
the biggest movie of all time?
Yeah.
It is?
Yep.
Wow, we really do need to go on vacation.
I keep saying that. We've been trying to organize this Avengers vacation. We deserve it. We deserve it. A little victory lap. But it's not just wonderful because you get to be a part of pop culture phenomenon the same way Star Wars impacted me. But I think what really will stay with me is the fact that the people we got to work with truly is not a bad apple in the bunch.
Yeah,
And
we have a good group of
we
people.
get along so well.
We get along so well, and it's really funny because I remember back in Iron Man 2 days, I think you had just finished filming the first Cap, and it was so interesting that you and I again were coming together. I mean, we had no idea that what we were making back.
Yeah.
It was just impossible to know what the phenomenon that the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the Avengers would be.
Yeah.
And so we shared a lot of the same kind of. I mean, you had a huge kind of burden to carry this massive, much beloved, iconic character that you were these huge shoes to fill, and I'm sure that must have been a very daunting task, and also like just a decision to make. And I think I remember you saying, I think I saw you out one night and you were kind of like weighing the possibility, and it was not I think a lot of people would just assume, oh yeah, that would be, you jump at that chance. But having been through it myself with also a partner that I was with that had also another big kind of iconic superhero thing that he was working on. And it's the pressure. You don't know how it's going to go, right?
No.
I mean, it could it seems ridiculous now because of how successful the Marvel stuff is, but it could be like career ending. I felt like that at the time, right? If it went the wrong way.
And even in success, I mean, even the movies are successful. If you hate the people you're working with, if you don't like your character, having to come back to work can really sour the process, even though you have this nice end result of being like, biggest thing all time. But it was a horribly dark chapter. Everything about making those movies, for me at least, was just an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, it's been just, I feel like unbelievably lucky to have been a part of something like that. It will be like one of my treasured memories of life. Just, having just forging the kind of family friendships that we had with everybody, and experiencing the success of something like that with a group of people that you love and like are rooting for is basically the best possible way that could turn out. And it's funny because even when we went on to do Avengers, the first one, I mean, all of us were totally, I think everybody was feeling like very uneasy about the concept.
Yeah.
It was just so absurd.
It was a lot. It was a big, big endeavor. This is it. This is the moment. If this doesn't work, this pipe dream that we've been hearing about could derail very quickly.
Like, were you shocked at how well the first Avengers did?
Blown away. But after that, I knew there was a chance that this could be something really big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, so thankful because of how well it went off screen. You know what I mean? Those are the people you got to work with.
Right.
As good as a final product is, I mean, I could be wrong in this, but ask any actor. I don't care how good the final movie is. If making it wasn't what you wanted it to be, you're not going to do it again.
Would you come back?
To Marvel?
Yeah.
Well, I'm an old man now, but
yeah, right. You're falling apart.
Yeah, everything clicks when I get up. Recovery is not the same.
Yeah, you're looking bad.
Smoking mirrors.
Falling apart.
Smoking mirrors. A pound of makeup on this. I didn't answer the question.
Would you come back?
You never say never. I loved the character. I don't know.
A hard no.
It's not a hard no, but it's not an eager yes either. Right. There's other things I'm working on right now, and the worry is you don't want to. I think Cap had such a tricky arc to stick the landing, and I think they did a really nice job letting him complete his journey. And if you're going to revisit it, it can't be a cash grab. It can't be just because audiences would be excited. There has to be, what are we revealing? What are we adding to the story? You don't want it to just be that one, man, they had this great thing and that little thing over there that we'll just, forget about. So a lot of things would have to come together, but it's
not obvious.
It doesn't feel at this time like that would be the thing that I'd be looking to do. No.
It also has such because I wasn't there for the last third of the film or whatever. I actually had no idea what was going to happen. And I don't know, maybe that was an ending that they kind of came to that conclusion in, post. I don't know how it worked exactly, if it was scripted, but the fact that the film ends on like true love's kiss was so touching and so fulfilling. Yeah. It was such a beautiful, cathartic ending, and I loved that. I loved that for Steve. I think he deserved it.
Yeah.
It was all his happiness.
It'd be a shame to sour that. You know what I mean? I'm very protective of it. You know what I mean? It was such a precious time, and jumping onto the movie was a terrifying prospect to me. I said no a bunch of times, and there's a million and one ways it could have gone wrong, and it could have backfired, and I could have regretted it, and it didn't happen. And to keep on testing that is just, it almost feels like, maybe you should just let this one sit. But, the good thing about Marvel is you never, I feel the way about Pixar too. They never go for the cash grab. They care. They care. It's never going to be something they just throw together and just because they know they're going to make a mint. So, in that regard, who knows?